I'm a video broadcast engineer at New Life AG. And Nathan here is my colleague, and he's a video systems engineer. I'll leave his introduction to himself, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey everybody, I'm Nathan. I'm a video systems engineer. I've been in this field for the last almost 7 years now, a little over 7 years. Professionally, I've been in it for the last 3 years, and as a student for the last maybe 4 years. So while I was a student, didn't really do much engineering work, but now after I've graduated the last 3 years, I've gotten more into video systems and dug more into integrations and how we can make video happen for house of worship, mainly churches. So we've worked with churches in the US and now working with churches here, my home church here in Hyderabad. And yeah, that's a little bit about myself. I did my education in Pennsylvania, and right now I'm employed at New Life here in Hyderabad.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Tell me more about your college. You've been to Pennsylvania, and I think you have done a lot of shows there. Yeah. And is it okay if I talk about Biden?
Yeah, you can talk. You can talk.
Is it
Yeah,
cool?
it is cool. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me more about. So how did you start off? How did you start off your video journey? Who was your inspiration? And
Looking back at inspiration, I think for me it all started when I started digging more into Elevation Church, and throughout my high school and college, I was very fascinated with Elevation Church. And you might be asking, why Elevation? Why not Hillsong? Hillsong has been there longer than Elevation. I think I was more fascinated by the style of production that Elevation did. They had a pre-show segment, and it was very organized and very thought out production. It was not like you turn on a camera and you do a system.
Yeah.
It was like an actually thought out production. And for me, it almost looked like I was watching like a news program. Like everything is very well planned.
Yeah.
Including the outfits and everything is it's very well thought out. And so I was very fascinated with it. And so I did a little bit of research and found out that there were a few people that worked at Elevation. One of them, Zack Kimrey.
Yeah.
So Kimrey has been a big inspiration for me because I've loved what he's done at Elevation. And I know he's no longer with Elevation. He's with Skylark now. And so are a few other people who have left from there. Nicole Hambrick was another one. She was over there. And so I knew them and through Instagram, and I actually got to meet them in person when I went there. But they've been a big inspiration for me getting into video.
Is Nicole still serving at Elevation?
Nicole is not. So she and her husband Nate, I think, have transitioned out of Elevation. They have now, I think, serving somewhere else. But when I visited Elevation, they were still on staff. A lot of people have transitioned out of there, but Elevation is still functioning, and I still look up to them. I love what they get to do, and that's been just a role model for me to get into video, and not just not from a perspective of like you come to a church, turn it on, but how can you take video from what it is now to the next level?
Yeah. So I have also been, the reason why we have started this podcast is also to be a resource to the Indian audience. Of course, in the West and in the East, there are already video happening. There is a lot of media happening. But in India, most of the churches don't. I always tell this to my crew that there are a lot of adult videos being uploaded. And we as Christians should upload Christian content. And so that is the reason, that is one of the main reasons why I wanted to start this podcast. And it has been good so far. And I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you.
I know that you'll be leaving by the way, he's leaving to US in the next few weeks.
Hopefully once I get my visa, I'm headed off back there.
Yes. And but yeah, what else? Tell me, what do you do apart from video?
Yeah.
At home, usually, do you always work or?
No, so apart from my work at New Life, I do freelance for a few churches and some non-profits in the US. So that keeps me busy. But I think for fun, I like to explore coffee shops. I like to just go and find places that have good coffee, sit down. I love playing golf. There's a golf place near my house. So I'll go on the course, and sometimes I'll rent a bucket of golf balls and I'll just swing and just keep practicing. I'm trying to get back into badminton, we'll see how the weather and everything else goes. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I just love being outdoors. So if I get a chance and if I've saved up some money, I'll probably like plan a trip somewhere. So I love traveling. So yeah.
That's so cool. Tell me more about your cap. I see a Bethel cap there. Is it a Bethel cap?
It is the Bethel cap.
It is a
Excuse
Bethel
my bad hair day, but yeah, it's a Bethel hat. We got to direct for Bethel in 2021. This was a music festival, Creation Music Festival. We had 2 years of back-to-back cancellation, and so 2022, sorry, and so 2020 because of COVID, and 2021 because COVID was still around, so we had to cancel the music festival. But when we got back, the music festival was able to bring some big artists, and so Bethel Music was one of them, and I had the opportunity to direct for them, yeah, it was really cool. At the end of the service, I got to meet the production manager, and Liam, he came forward and was like, "Hey, great job with the cut." He goes, "We'd like to give you a piece of merchandise," and he goes, "Just go over there and tell them my name, and you can pick anyone for free." And so,
That's so cool.
I wanted a T-shirt, but they didn't have a T-shirt in my size, so I just picked out a hat. But yeah, that's the story of Bethel Music. We got to direct for them, and you can watch the multi-view right here. 4 is live. Tell the drone to wait. 6 is live. Tell to wait. 5 is live. 3 is live. 2 is live. Going to 1, 4 is live. Thank you for that. 4, 6 is live. 5 is live. Is drone ready? Drone. Coming in drone, and drone is live. Beautiful. Oh my gosh, that looks so nice.
And also, you've been doing Skillet, and he's also been a very big part of Joe Biden's rallies when he was
Campaigning
for his presidential thing. Tell me more about it. How is government shows different from the Christian shows?
Yeah, I got involved with political production in COVID 2020. I was stuck in the US and they needed help, and so I got involved with that. We started campaigning for him before he was even president. So he was a presidential candidate. Trump was still president, and so we were campaigning from his basement. We were doing remote productions, and so we could sit anywhere in the US, technically globally, and we could control his production. So we set everything up in his basement, and we had everything on, and everything was connected over network, and we had TeamViewer. We had a TeamViewer license that was just bought in and kept running 24/7. And so if we ever needed to update a firmware or dump footage remotely over the network, we could just log in, and then we could do an FTP and transfer footage and then wipe out the disk and start remote recording. It's all remote. So you could just sit remotely, and everything was networked. And we built it in such a way that even if they lost power, like we never lost internet. They had a fiber connection, and we never lost internet, which was good. Everything was running on battery backups, and everything was running from his basement. So it was easy to set up, and we didn't have a lot of disturbance. And so, yeah, it was a lot.
Was it from the White House?
It was not from the White House because he was not president yet. So only when he becomes president, he will move to the White House. So we were campaigning from he has 2 offices. He has one in Wilmington in Delaware, which is more of like a house/office. And then he has like his official office in Rehoboth. And so we would keep going back and forth. Once in a few weeks, we'll go there for a firmware update. Physically, we have to sometimes go there. But for the most part, most of it was remote production. And we got to do that. And then as we transitioned on, we got to do in-person rallies. But again, in person, you couldn't gather in person. So we like socially distanced. We even had rallies with cars. So we'll have it in like an open field. And then people will pull up with their car. And then we will send the master audio feed to a radio frequency. So we'll choose an open channel, like let's say 93.1. And then we'll tell everyone in the car, tune in your frequency to 93.1.
You can just broadcast it like that?
You can broadcast. You can buy the small, as long as it's not a channel that's not occupied, you can broadcast it on that. And so we will choose a channel and then we'll broadcast. So we'll tell the people in the car, you can watch the person talking, and then you can just listen to it on your car in real time. And so, which was amazing.
That's a glam. That's a total glam. And all these things have actually helped you to be who you are right now.
Yeah, they have.
Has it been? Did you have sleepless nights, stressful days?
Oh yeah, especially when you're in the political sector. So the whole thing about political production is it's very last minute. So there's someone I follow online. His name is Brad. He works with Mosaic Productions, and he just found out 2 days ago that he has to do a production for Trump. 2 days ago. All right. So now you have 48 hours to find a crew and it has to be a big enough crew, at least 35, 40 people. You now have to find equipment.
Yeah.
If you don't have equipment, you have to outsource it or you have to lease it. And then you have to drive down to that venue. You know, if you're in California and your venue's in Arizona or somewhere, you have to put everything on a truck and then go there overnight. And then once you get there, there's no rest, there's no concept of sleep.
Right.
You immediately come to the arena, you're working like 18, 20 hours a day. And then when it's a candidate like that, you have a very little wiggle room as to when you can come and leave.
Right.
Because security is high. So, like a few months ago, we did a show for Biden and it was in Colorado. We had to get to the venue at 5:45 in the morning because we have security check. So Secret Service will come, they'll do checks. That'll take at least an hour, hour and a half, depending on how big the arena is. And then you can go in and then turn everything on, check if everything is okay. So like you have to work with security, you have to work with the government. Everything is very last minute, especially when you're doing political shows. They will call you sometimes in the middle of the night or sometimes at 2, 3 in the morning saying, hey, we have a show, can you fly here? And or last minute. And so, you know, you have to go for a show. And if you're a contractor, if you're on staff, when you're more on staff with the company, you don't have a choice. But when you're with a contractor, you have the option to say yes or no.
Yeah.
You're not required to, you're not obligated to. But you know, working stuff in the public and sector, especially the government, is really fun because you get to see people that you usually will see on the news. And it's fun because your work gets to be seen on the news channel.
Right. Is there room for error in political stuff?
There is room for error, but it is very unlikely. So the whole thing about the political game is like you can't make a mistake unlike a church or any other sector. And the reason is because millions of people are watching it. So let's say there is an error in the script,
right?
And the candidate reads it or the teleprompter goes out, then it's a major issue because now the candidate is stuck on stage. Your talent is stuck on stage. They don't know what to say. And now it makes you look bad. Right. So either you will get fired or that production company will never be called back to come back. Right. We've had situations where we've done shows where we had someone fire the wrong VOG. So when let's say a Senator A was walking on stage, he fired the VOG for Senator B. You know, and it came through the entire house, says, please welcome to the stage Senator so-and-so's name.
What is a VOG?
A VOG is Voice of God. So it's
Voice of God. Okay.
That's actually pretty much the actual like acronym for it. Okay. Some people like to say voice over graphic.
Okay.
So it's like when you do corporate shows, they will say, please welcome to the stage, you know,
the VOG.
They'll say the person's name. Okay. Or please give a round of applause for, you know, that voice is usually pre-recorded. And the actual VOG, if you look it up, it says voice of God. But usually like in the technical term, they'll sometimes say like voice over graphic. Both are correct. You know, there's no right or wrong answer. But it's pretty much played when like a person's walking on stage to introduce them. And so that one person once did it and he was never called back. So after that day, he was never called back because there was a big thing and CNN did a whole article on it.
It's a tight production. It's
a very tight production. It's an extremely tight production. There are a lot of moving pieces. Sometimes you don't even have rehearsals. So a few years ago when we were doing stuff for Biden, we did a show for Lady Gaga. And so she was opening for Biden. And her crew was late. And by the time they set up and everything, it was already 6:37. The show was supposed to start at 7:30. There's no time for rehearsals.
Right.
You can't rehearse when the crowd is coming.
Right.
You know, so there sometimes you just run your show hoping everything goes well. And but again, that's only in a very like tight political production. In a corporate environment, it's much more different. Corporate, like everything's planned out and like they have schedules and when you can come, when you can go, and like they know who is speaking when.
Right.
Months of planning goes into this. Some of these political productions, there's like last minute stuff added on. So like we have done shows where they will ask, we only need audio and lights. And then when you're on the way there, they'll be like, oh, by the way, we also need video.
Right.
And then also they will call me like, oh, by the way, we also need staging. So, you know, you have to constantly be ready for change. Yeah.
But this is what I've noticed when it comes to Indian production versus the production in the West.
Yeah.
The media production especially, they are very pre-planned.
Yeah.
And they are more theoretical than practical. I mean, practical is there.
Is there, yeah.
Because only after theory you get to a practical stage.
Yeah.
But also there is experience. Now this is the middle juice of it.
Yeah.
There are so many people in the media who didn't study media, but are still on a pro level.
On a pro level, yeah.
but there is also a need for theoretical guys who are in demand. Actually, they are in a lot of demand now because experience will count. But at the same time, qualification is also the cherry on the...
True.
So, what would you suggest the Indian media guys? Do you want them to get qualified, certified, or gain as much as experience? Or what do you think can be better for Indian media, for church media especially? Like you said, governments and political campaigns have no room for error. But whereas if you see Indian churches, Indian media channels or anything like that, there is a little space for the error. And if we have, of course, human errors keep happening. Technical errors, we can't do anything about it. But if you had to add on something that will actually make a difference, or whoever is watching this can actually implement in their own churches or in their own home setups. There will be gamers watching this, maybe. There will be small churches watching this, maybe. But what can you tell us that can reduce, at least reduce, not cut off everything, but reduce room for error for churches, next for corporates, and maybe third for gamers?
The one thing I will say is, especially if you're getting into the production field, try as much as possible to find resources where you can learn. And one of the good things, like me and Steven and the person behind the camera, David, we constantly brainstorm is how do like these churches. So we follow a person. If you're watching Shep, I don't know, but I hope you are. Shep from Elevation.
Hi, Shep.
Hi, Shep. Great inspiration for a lot of us. And the reason is why, because his videos are very intentional about how production is done.
Right.
At Elevation, they have this go podium saying, but there is a lot more that goes behind why that podium is brought on stage. And there is a reason as to why that podium is brought when they brought it out. I always wondered, sometimes you won't even catch it in the camera shot.
Right.
And it's very intentional on working between your stagehands and the video director so that the shot is not even seen.
That's so tight.
That is so tight. So as far as room for error goes, the first thing I'm trying to say is find people who are already in the field. And if you know them like physically, if you know them like in person, hang around with them. If you're in a video field, find people who are in the video field and talk to them, DM them. Instagram is a great way to actually get connected with the people. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the people I look up to, I have talked to them over Instagram. I have never met them. But they're a great resource because they talk to you back and forth. So always don't be shy to send that DM to them and ask them questions. There is no dumb question if you're starting out. And people are always happy to teach you. The other thing I would say is try and see what actually passionates you. Corporate is different from church. And so is political different from other, social events. And so if you're interested in church production, find ways you can get involved in your local church and find resources online. MXC is a great one. The Brady Show is a good one. Pro Church Tools. There are a lot of online sources available where you can actually get involved in church production. Right. And we try as much as possible to be perfect. There is no perfect church. There is no perfect person. But we strive for greatness and we strive for achieving the best that we can. And so throughout that process, I feel like we shouldn't lose sight of why we're doing it. And that's one of the good things I like about Elevation Church is because through it all, like this week, if you noticed, Elevation, if you're watching the stream, like Shep posted a video where the director accidentally put color bars online. And it's very interesting because like mistakes do happen. Even the most perfect churches that we might think or the most biggest churches in the world do make mistakes. Right. And so as humans, like mistakes are unavoidable, especially in a production environment where everything runs on a cable. Cables can go bad. You can lose power. There's a lot of things that can go wrong in a situation, but we can take steps to avoid them. Right. And I would say if anyone's interested in getting production, definitely you can DM both of us, but also check out resources online. We'll put it in the description or at the end of this video where you can actually find resources online. People you can follow, people you can DM, YouTube channels. Another great person is Chad Vegas, former Bethel music director. Now he's with Transformation Church. Has been a great blessing to me personally because I love his intention behind worship first and capturing second, which is not often taught in churches. And so, which is something I feel like most churches should learn as to why are you actually doing production? Are you doing it for self-satisfaction or are you actually doing it so that the message gets across?
Right. Yeah. It's actually a global thing. I don't know if somebody said it on Instagram. The second your church is going live on YouTube, Facebook, or any of the platforms, you're global.
Yeah.
You're not a local church anymore.
Yeah.
You're a global
church. Yeah.
And the standards should be global.
True.
Or maybe the standards should be heavenly.
Yeah.
And to get there, it should be a Holy Spirit driven church.
Yeah.
And I'm glad, and we are glad that actually this church is a Holy Spirit driven church. And the lot of the stuff that we are playing around with, the mics, the lights, and all this, is actually God's great blessing on us, so that we can be a resource to a lot of people in India and maybe different countries who don't even have a camera or even a mic.
Sure.
In rural areas like Africa, like Afghanistan, or maybe different countries who actually don't know much about media. And the main reason, the main goal is to get the word out.
Yeah.
And we are just a bridge. So the other thing that I would really want you to ponder upon is, what would you suggest volunteers or camera ops or production directors or any engineer in the video field, where do you want them to actually go get their resources from? Like MXU, like you said, is one of the good platforms. Is there anything else that we can do?
Yeah. So personally, what I decided to do was, after my 12th, was when I wanted to get into videos, I realized I wanted to get into a professional environment where I actually can learn this. And so what I did was I ended up going to a college in the US, shout out to University of Valley Forge. But I actually went there and actually did my 4 years of education in digital media and focused mainly in video production. So I got to do my entire schooling over there, which was amazing. And then I actually got to work as a production manager there, and which was perfect because we were bringing in almost like $45,000 to $50,000 for the school, which is not a big amount when you think about it. But for a small size school like us, it was a big amount that we were bringing in annually when it comes to events. And then we also got to partner with districts. And so we also got to partner with a company called BNY, which I'm actually going to be working with full time. They've helped us greatly because they've helped us teach us LED wall. So if you can, and if finances are available, or even if you have to take a loan, I would recommend going to a school and actually spending time and getting a degree in there. One thing I will not recommend is getting a master's in production, and here's why. Production is a very practical field. And so you have to be physically in the field to actually experience and touch the equipment and actually mess around and learn from your mistakes. A lot of the physical mistakes you won't learn in a classroom. A classroom will teach you how to plug and play. A classroom doesn't teach you how to troubleshoot. You know, troubleshooting is something that we have to like actually dig in ourselves in the environment. And so when you're doing a master's, you're just going to be spending money and learning a lot of theory. And most companies are not looking to hire someone who has a master's. I know places in the US, you have to pay them more if they have a master's. Like legally, you have to pay them more. And so if you have a master's, it's sometimes a con for a lot of production companies because they don't want to hire someone who has a master's. They know, can you actually can you program lights for a concert? Can you run a show? If we were to send you a truck with video equipment, can you do an entire video production with what you have without complaining? You know, saying that, oh, it's a bad equipment. And this is what I will say. It's never like the equipment's fault. Like you can do a great production with a Sony A6400 and you can do a great production with a Red Komodo. It's not the equipment. It's how you use the equipment, and it's the people behind it and the expertise and how you actually make it look good. You know, you can make, like over here, we just have 2 lights over here hitting us. And you can have like 15 more lights and it's still going to look good. But at the end of the day, you can make the best out of the resources you have. And which is actually something like I preach to churches, especially here and back in the US, is don't compare yourself to other churches around the world and say they have this camera, like Elevation has Panasonic VariCams. You know, we want to get VariCams. Like VariCams are amazing cameras. They're, you know, it's a Super 35 sensor. It's a Netflix approved camera. It has like, you can do 10-bit. It's internal recording. It's a great camera. But a church here in India might not need that camera of that caliber because it will not serve your need. Also, you have to think budget-wise. Elevation works on like a $200 million budget a year, you know? And a church in India might not be even doing like 1% or like, you know, less than 1% of that.
$200 million is like a massive budget.
It's a massive budget. Like if you think about it, $1 million in Indian context is about 8.5 crores. All right. So when you're talking about $200 million, just if you were to do the math, it's just a lot of money that you're thinking. You know, that's just from like tithes and offerings and everything put together across their campuses. So like all of that is a lot of money, which wouldn't like be practical for an Indian environment. And the reason we say that is because churches like Elevation, they do live music recordings. They do a lot of stuff outside of just a Sunday morning.
Right.
So they need cameras that will last them a long time. And getting cameras like that for a church over here wouldn't make sense if it's just going to sit on your, you know, camera platform to be used 60 or 55 times a year. You know, and so that is something I would recommend, is to be intentional behind the equipment you're getting. And because at the end of the day, the money you're putting into this is not free money. It is the money that people are giving unto God. It is their hard-earned tithes and offerings, and you need to be good stewards of, you know, what you're going to be using this money for.
Right.
So, yeah.
I heard a message from Steven Furtik saying that it's not the ability that brings you closer to God. It's the availability. So if there is a volunteer who is available, does not know anything about video, does not know the V in the video, if he is available, God will give him the ability. That is what is my testimony also. I did not know V in video, I did not know S in the SDI, but God has taught it to me. And it's all glory to God. I would like to give, not like to give, I will want to give all my credit, whatever I am, to God. Again, to be intentional is what you said, and I totally agree upon it. What do you think of LEDs in a church? LEDs, projectors. I think most of the people know the difference between LED and projectors. But if small churches or big churches need to get their lyrics up and a stage display on, do you really recommend them to have LEDs and stage display for the worship team and for the audience as well?
That's a very good point. And actually, I will give the analogy of like a middle class working family. All right, a middle class working family has, let's say, a Honda City. All right, it's a family of 4. It's a good car. It works well. It will run them a few more years, but the family has been doing well. All right, the family has been doing well, and there is no need for them to upgrade a car. But they want to, because they feel like if they were to get a better car, it'll run them a few more years, and plus they will also have a second car with them. You know, there is no need. Keep in mind, there is no need for them to get a second car. The Honda City works perfectly fine. But now they want to, let's say, upgrade and maybe get like I'm not talking like a fancy car, but let's say, what's an upgrade from a Honda City? You know, I'm trying to think. Maybe they want to get like a Toyota Fortuner. All right, they want to get like an SUV now. All right. It is an upgrade, but at the end of the day, it's not a needed upgrade. But it will elevate the way they can now do road trips. It's a diesel car compared to a petrol car. You can now do road trips, so it will give you more gas mileage on the highway. I think of LED in a very similar manner for the church. The average church around the world usually doesn't have an LED wall. All right, most churches still run on TVs.
Right.
You know. Churches in the US, there are a lot of churches that don't and probably won't invest in LED wall. All right. An LED wall is never a need for a church. You know, even looking at our church, it is not a need. It is more of a want, you know. And the reason we want an LED wall is because at the end of the day, we think about the experience from the people's perspective. You know, a church our size, and we'll insert a picture right here, a church our size is pretty big. You know, and when you think about it, people sitting all the way at the back need to have big enough lyrics. And people sitting on the balcony, if they can't see the stage, they now need to see the speaker. Now, if you're looking at investing TVs, it would be a dumb idea, because you will have to invest a lot of TVs to put it together, and then you have the lines in between, and they don't make big enough TVs. So over there, we can make work with LED wall. But it's not a need. You know what I mean?
If it is a 250 or a 100-seater church, it's not a need.
It is not a need. But if you have the resources and if you would like to upgrade, I would recommend churches upgrading. And this is why. An LED will last you much longer in the long run, number one. Number two, an LED is not conformed to a size or when I mean by size, I mean you're not conformed to like how wide or how big you want it. For Christmas, you can do a totally different design with the LED wall you have.
Right.
For Easter, you can do a different design. When you have TVs, you're limited by the design and how you display them. You can have a wide setup for Christmas. You can have a small setup. You can do anything you want with LED wall. And the other thing with LED walls, you also have to consider the viewing distance, which a lot of churches don't consider, is because everyone wants to get an LED wall, but if the church is smaller in size and if you're very close, you're either going to be blinding them, or you need to expand. You need to invest in thinner pixel pitches.
Again, so it is a distraction, is what I
feel. It is a
distraction.
So if you're like in a small church and you invest in an LED wall, and if your pixel pitch is not 2.6 or lower, you're getting a bigger pixel pitch. It is not the most ideal environment. It is like if you were to sit very close to the TV, you know? And so, or if you were to get, like, if you have a very big house and you only get like a 40-inch TV, you know? Or if you have a small home and you get a really big TV, you know, you have to think about which TV would, or which display would work best in that environment. Right. So LED is great. There are different kinds of LED walls. There are different sizes of LED walls, different pixel pitches. I personally don't think every church needs an LED wall. It is a huge investment, especially in India, because LED walls are not manufactured here. They're manufactured in China, and so by the time you import them, it's a lot of money that goes into an LED wall.
And moreover, in India, if you have to import anything from China, the government will juice you up. They pretty much rip you of the taxes, and so it is not worth it unless you're looking at a long-term investment. And LED walls are built in such a way they can last you 8 to 10 years without degradation or without replacing bulbs. Right. The processor will not change. The processor will still stay the same, but your needs will go higher. A good example is right now at our church, a processor can only do a 3G SDI. So, but I have a Decklink 8K, but I can't send anything more than 1080. Right. You know, I would have to switch to a display port, which needs a converter. So now I'm experiencing a delay. You know, and so there are pros and cons with LED walls you have, but I would say the average church today doesn't need an LED wall. Which software would you recommend? Easy Worship or Pro Presenter? Personally, I would recommend Pro Presenter, and the reason is because Easy Worship is a great software, but when we talk church production, I feel like the average church should invest in a Mac system, and here is why. Macs are built for production houses and for production environments. They can handle CPU and GPU much better than Windows machines can. Now, a lot of people might argue with me on this, saying that, oh, but I can custom build it. I was like, yes, but a custom build, like, you need to actually know the computer to custom build it. Like, I can't build a custom built Windows computer without watching a YouTube channel. Correct. Like, the average person doesn't know how to build a custom PC. You know, you'll have to watch this thing, and then if, like, when you're custom building it, like, if a pin breaks or something breaks, like, you can't immediately fix it. It's gone, you know, and you have to be extremely careful about making sure it's tidy and neat, and Windows updates are not the best. And so most production softwares are catered for Mac. And so I personally would recommend Pro Presenter. Pro Presenter is great because you can do up to 8 screens. You can do multiple audience screens. You can do stage display screens. Right now at our church, we're using like 3 screens that we're using, and it's working great because it's all going through a capture card. Right. You can even do NDI with Pro Presenter, which is amazing because a lot of churches are implementing NDI. Like this past Sunday, we tested NDI lyrics for our LED wall. We didn't use the Decklink because we wanted to avoid the 2 frames of delay that we were having. And it was great because this Sunday we had absolutely no delay with the lyrics on the LED wall. So lower thirds and center screen were working in sync over LED wall, over network. The thing about NDI is you do need to have a very good dedicated network switch, which we can get into later. But I would recommend Pro Presenter for just basic visuals and lyrics. Now, if you want to dig in a little bit more deeper and do custom graphics and custom resolutions and like do a lot more compositions, I would recommend Resolume. But most churches, this is for graphics. This is for LED graphics. Most churches usually use Resolume. You can also use Pro Presenter, but Resolume is good. And the other software that a lot of people use on tour is Disguise. Now, Elevation hasn't made this full switch to Disguise yet, but I think they will in the future. Yeah, but again, Disguise is a Windows-based. Disguise is a Windows-based, and it is a server-based system. So, like, you actually have to buy the expansion module. You have to connect your system, and you can actually program even your rigging on Disguise. So, like, you know, there are a few people at our church that work with Disguise, and I think it's amazing. And I would love to someday move completely to a Disguise system. But yeah. If somebody has to, of course, a small church would not need Disguise or want Disguise also. That is bad for them. But Disguise for a big church, if there had to be a shift from Resolume, if we had to go to Disguise, would you recommend it?
I would recommend it. It is so, Resolume is an easy software for people to navigate. It's like, if you were to use ProPresenter, except it's more vertical and like horizontal in your layers and columns. You can just trigger a clip and just, as long as you have an output, it'll show up. Disguise is a little bit more complicated than that. Disguise requires a lot of programming and like making sure like it's node based. So you have to make sure like everything is in properly, and then you can run it off of like a media server. But I wouldn't recommend the average church making the switch unless you're looking to like do a lot more like crazy, custom graphics and compositions and custom LED wall setups, which Resolume can't handle.
Right. Yeah. I think for me, my personal favorite is Resolume.
Resolume,
It's a plug-and-play software.
It's a very easy software.
Yeah, you can scale anything.
You scale anything. I love that it's compatible with NDI, so I can send NDI over, and both of our systems are hardlined over Cat5. So like I don't have to worry about like me ever losing signal. Even if Wi-Fi were to go down, like you can still run it because it's not running over Wi-Fi. It's just running over a static IP.
Right.
And so as long as you have a switch in between, like it should be perfectly fine. So I can love that it can do NDI. It's compatible with Blackmagic products. So I have a deck link in there. It's perfect because it can read my capture card and also send from the same one. So no problem on that. It has a decent amount of effects sources, and our composition is built in such a way that you can just our church service composition is built like from the start to end of a service. So I have my welcome, and then I have pre-service, I have worship, sermon, and then I have my thank you. So it's built in such a way that it works perfectly fine for the average church. And Resolume is a one-time payment.
Right.
You just buy the software once and you can use it on any system.
Disguise is a recurring guy?
Disguise, I have to check. I believe if you want to use their cloud platform, you have to pay for it. I believe. Yeah, but Disguise is like extremely expensive.
But again, like if you're talking about churches, what you did with your systems back in there, the Resolume, ProPresenter are both volunteer friendly.
They are extremely volunteer friendly.
How much do you think a church needs to plan volunteer friendly equipment, volunteer friendly cables or anything like that? What do you think of it? Throw some perspective.
I've worked in both big and small environments. I've worked with some crazy equipment, which even sometimes like I don't know what it does or how to program it. But I've also worked in environments where like the equipment's easy to use. A good example is like an ATEM for like an ATEM Mini. A 4-input switcher is a very easy switcher that anyone can use. But if I were to throw a raw security to someone, that is something that will need a lot of explaining to do. And so a lot of people often want the best equipment, and the best equipment is sometimes the greatest, but sometimes you also have to think about it from the volunteer's perspective. Is your church staff run or volunteer run? At Elevation, a lot of the production, like especially in the room, is all run through staff.
Is it?
Yeah, most of it is run through staff. Like Joe Lack is on staff, Jared Olson's on staff, Shep is on staff. There are a lot of people like who are on staff, and there are other people I don't know their names, but they're on staff. And a lot of when I say staff, I mean it's on a contractual role, which means every year they just renew their contract, and so they can choose to walk out at any time. But like they are on staff at the church, and the reason they do this, I know their cameras are a lot of them are volunteer based. But when you're in the production room, if you have staff who are there full time, it makes sense to invest in equipment because you know the equipment.
Yeah,
you're there to troubleshoot it throughout the week. A volunteer can wash his hands and he can leave. He's not technically obligated to fix stuff, unlike a staff member is. And so when it comes down to equipment, I think the church should think about it from the person's perspective rather than investing it from a perspective of, oh, this is the best equipment. This is what this church is using. This is why I want to do it. That's one of the questions I actually asked Moses when he was here. I was like, why did you go with the Avid console than the Digico console? And so he told me that Avid, since it works perfectly with Pro Tools, you can do multi-track recording, but also Avid is a little bit more easier for volunteers to use than Digico, which, works well in the audio environment. I feel like the same thing can be applied in any environment. If you were to invest in equipment or softwares, make sure your volunteers would be easy to train with. So someday, let's say you're not here, you're in another city, or you're serving in another church, or you're sick, your show or your church will still go on without having any issues. So one of the good things that we did right now with our multimedia setup that we'll show you a little bit about is we built it in such a way that today if I'm not there, all you have to do is just turn on the power conditioner and turn on the 2 Mac Studios and everything turns on.
That's it?
That's it. You don't have to plug in anything. You don't have to plug in an HDMI. You don't have to do anything. The systems are built in such a way that they're so robust that you just turn on 3 things on a Sunday morning and it works perfectly fine. And that works well for us because our entire multimedia is run by volunteers.
Right.
And so when I was building the system, I had to think about it from the multimedia from the volunteers' perspective.
Right.
I didn't want to think about it because when I first got here, I realized there was a lot of troubleshooting happening every Sunday. People would plug in an HDMI and then like a screen wouldn't work.
And
SDIs we would plug in. It was all over the place. Or like someone will accidentally unplug an HDMI and then you lose stage display.
Right.
And so I wanted to build it in such a way where, okay, I was like, what can be the easiest one? And the good thing with Blackmagic and Resolume is like they remember the last device you used. So if I say Blackmagic, I want my iMac to be Decklink 1 and stage display to be Decklink 2. Now, if I turn off my system and turn it back on the next Sunday, it'll remember the last week. I don't have to assign it every Sunday.
Right.
You know, it's like it remembers it.
It's a safe startup state.
It's a safe startup state. Perfect. And it works for Resolume as well. So like every time I do anything changes to it, it remembers what I did last.
Right.
And it works well for us because like I don't have to ever worry about them worrying about, oh, my stage display is not working. Like it's built in such a way you never have to worry about it running. Obviously, unless like the STI goes bad but STIs usually don't go bad like that. Yeah.
So another thing which is out of the topic, but you have done a show with Skillet.
I have, we've done quite a number of Christian bands. We've done Skillet, we've done Hillsong. Hillsong was my first band I got to do.
Wow.
Hillsong Worship, back when everyone was still with Hillsong. We got to do Hillsong Worship was my first. We did Skillet, Torrin Wells, Dante Bo, KB. Big names, yeah. We've done Elevation, Bethel, Andy Mineo, the rapper, Kerry Job, Cody Carnes. For King and Country, one of the best ones I've gotten to direct for, and then so many other names that became Zach Williams.
Which was your favorite?
I think my favorite has probably been For King and Country. Okay. And the reason I say For King and Country is their productions are so good that like their band is amazing. And For King and Country, like they will make use of that entire stage. Like I've done shows where they'll climb the truss on the side of the stage.
Wow.
And their cello player will throw the cello mid-stage through someone off stage. I've done shows with them where they'll come to a platform and they will rise up and then it tilts. I've done shows with them where they'll go to an LED wall platform and the LED wall goes up and down and comes inwards. Like their production is insane. So we don't do a lot of that. We only do the iMac cut.
Right.
But after For King and Country, I'd probably say Skillet. Yeah. Skillet, the first time I did production, it scared me the first time because no one told me there was going to be fire on stage. All right. And so when the show started, we saw these boxes, but I thought it was smoke. All right. And the first time I did a production for Skillet, I was a stage roamer and I had a Sony HX75 on my, like a big broadcast camera on my shoulder. And I'm using the eyepiece and I'm very close. Like if I'm here, like you're probably maybe a little bit far away and I'm in the pit recording you. And on the first song of the downbeat, the fire comes up.
Oh, whoa.
And the fire, like you could feel the heat. Like you feel like you're in like a really big sauna.
Yeah.
And so I had the camera and the fire came and the first fire came, I was blown away. And I genuinely for a second thought like something fell on me because it was extremely hot.
Right.
And they had 4 of them on stage.
Yeah, it's like a furnace.
It's like a furnace. So like the entire first pit and row of people can actually feel the heat. But Skillet productions are like insane. Like, but they also damage your ear. Like especially if you're close, like you need to have ear protection because like after the concert was done, like I actually had ear damage for like a little bit for a couple of days, but I was able to recover. But it's unless you take good care of your ears. That's why we recommend using like in-ears or point source for your comms if you're using them for longer days because like it helps protect your hearing.
So in India, media is mostly underrated. It's totally underrated. Not everyone you see is into media. Out of 10 people, maybe you'll find 2 guys into media, and women though especially not at all. But in our church, I'm glad that women are also part of, women and girls are a part of media, and they are mostly enthusiasts who want to learn more about, but their goal is to serve God. In India, mostly people don't get paid enough for media. Like there are different TV channels who just hire 10th class pass or inter pass, and they just throw them some bucks and they teach them one thing. And they get to do that one thing for their whole lifetime. And here media is so vulgar. if you go to studios, if you go to channels, you won't see professionals. You won't see professionalism. It's all cable laid around. It's all crumpled cable. Too many things happening. And you never know which HDMI you plug out.
True.
And everything runs out. You never know which power cable. Even if you see power, it's not
managed properly.
It's not managed properly. And
so
how about US? Can you tell me more about of their culture?
So the production environment in the US it's very different. It depends on again which company you work with and who. But I would say the average company, when they do production, it's very well planned out. So the production process starts months ago sometimes.
Do they use generators?
So the concept of generator doesn't exist unless you're doing it in an open field. If you're doing it in an arena, the generator doesn't exist. Like everything is running on house power. And if it's running on house power, like that arena will not lose power. It's built in such a way like you won't lose power. Now systems will run on like UPS or something like that, but like for the most part, there are no generators running because it's a lot of consumption for something that's not going to happen. Like the probability is very low. We have done shows when it's like in the middle of the field and stuff like a press conference. Yeah, we run it on a generator. But production environments in the US are very well thought out. So it'll start months ago when they build out the contract. And everything is specified in the contract. Everything is specified. From the time you actually like enter the arena, your food, everything is like actually planned out in that contract. So they will tell you, okay, you're getting meals for so-and-so. These ones you're on your own. These ones the company will provide. And
it's all clear.
It's all very clear. And then the second thing they do is they do a lot of drawings. And what I mean by drawings, like everything is well thought out. So they will show you if this is the map of the arena, your video will be set up right here. And it'll be to the T. Like it'll be set up like you get this much square feet of video arena. Like it's actually drawn to scale. And the other thing is like rigging points. So when you're doing a show, like rigging points are actually drawn on the map. They use a software called Vectorworks, and they will actually draw it. So if this is the arena of the room, we want 14 rigging points or 15 rigging points for just say like the stage or for LED wall.
Right.
And this is exactly where it'll be. So you, on the day of the show, you come up and you show the plot to the rigging person, and he will tell his crew, okay, this is where you need to draw it, and they will drop it. He gets it done. Rigging is an extremely expensive job in the US.
Right.
It's a risky job because you need to climb up and you need to rig it and you're on, but that's how it's usually done. As far as pay goes, I feel like the US is a little bit more nicer when it comes to pay. It depends on the show that you're doing. Obviously, it depends on the company also. If you're working with a company that is not set up properly, they can sometimes cheat you. So they'll make you work, but they'll delay the payment by 6-7 days or like sometimes even longer, saying that we haven't received the payment well. So if they're running, just neck to neck on their payments, then that's a pretty bad company. But I've also worked with places where they pay you really fast. So I've been happy to work with some churches that pay you really well. I've also worked with production houses where they have a day rate. So when I started as a student, like your day rates are much lower. So they have a student day rate. And then when I got into it, the day rate kept going up. And when I became full-time, it eventually climbs up the ladder. I know most production houses, they have a paid salary a month. So let's say you're making like $3,000 or $4,000 a month. That would be your salary for the month. But on top of that, you can make day rates. So if you're doing a show, you'll get paid a day rate for, let's say, a 3-day show. And obviously your food, your gas, your hotel, everything is paid for.
That's super cool.
Yeah. So there they honor work a lot more because it is a lot of manual labor. And it's not cheap. So labor is very expensive in the US. Especially when we would do shows, the rental charges will be very low, but your labor is expensive. Like especially at UVF, when we would do rentals are very low, because it doesn't cost a lot to rent a switcher and a camera. But your labor, like if you're bringing 10 people, now you have to charge $300 per person. So if you bring 10 people, that's $3,000 a day. Now 3 days, that's already $9,000 right there in just labor.
You're talking all in dollars. If you have to compare it in rupees in India, people usually get paid somewhere around $2,000, $3,000
a day.
A day,
yeah.
And if you go down to a technical guy or a labor guy who is just getting your light up in the sky, he will get 300 rupees per day.
See, that breaks my heart because again, the other thing is work is viewed differently. For example, if you tell someone in the US you're a jib operator, it's a professional job. Like a jib operator is a full-time job sometimes. If you own a jib, you can do 20 shows in a day and charge $3,000 for a jib operator. If you own a full-time jib, it's a full-time job. I have someone I follow, his name is Ryan Bolton. He does jib all the time. He owns a jib. He owns a techno crane too. So it's a full-time job for him. But in India, if you tell someone you're a jib operator, like it's looked down upon. They're like, oh, it's like a manual.
Most of them don't even know what is a jib.
What is a jib? But even if you tell someone in the video environment that you're a jib operator, they look down on you. Oh, okay, like it's not considered a great job. So I feel like the problem starts there because work is not considered big here in India. See, over there in the US, even a janitor gets respect.
Right.
Like here, the concept of respect doesn't start until you're actually someone in society. Unless you're making a decent amount of money or you have a name for yourself, you don't have a name in society. People don't respect you. People they'll disregard you.
Right.
And so it starts there, and obviously your pay scale comes appropriately over there. So over there, work is respected, so you're paid appropriately. Like when I would do shows, I would sometimes get paid $400, $450 a day.
A day.
I've done shows where I've also gotten paid $600 a day. This is on top of food and hotels and everything.
It's all about $200.
It's all anything below $300 usually is considered like disrespectful, because it's very like cheap if you pay anyone like $200 for a whole day's worth of work. Right. A proper day's worth of work is anything above 8 hours. So for 8 hours, if you paid someone $200, like I feel like they would maybe take offense to it. They would, you'll have to pay them a little bit more for that.
Yeah. Is there work-life balance in the US compared to India?
There is a decent work-life balance. Now, if you're working for a production company that's doing show after show and they're understaffed, then you won't have a work-life balance because you're the one that's doing all the work. But if they have a decent amount of staff, a decent amount of contractors, the good thing about work-life balance is you get to choose how you set the boundaries. If your boundaries are loose, and the company can take advantage of you, because if they know, okay, this guy likes to work and he doesn't like to rest and he doesn't have any boundaries, they'll misuse it. They'll pay you, but you won't have advantage. They'll take advantage. But if you set a boundary, hey, I'm not going to work on Saturday, Sunday. Sundays especially is my time with the Lord and my family. Don't trouble me. The company respects you because they're like, okay, we can't trouble him on the weekend. Yeah, so there is a good work-life balance over there. And I think companies should have a good work-life balance for their employees. But I also feel like it's also on the employee's duty as well. Right. It's not always the company's fault. It is sometimes the worker's fault. You need to learn to set that boundary. I have a lot of people saying, I talk to them, especially they're saying, I have so much work. And I was like, why don't you ever say no? People find it hard to say no. And then they blame the company, saying the company's giving work. I was like, no, you have to set the boundary with the company. For the company's perspective, your life doesn't matter.
Correct.
If you were to die today, you're easily replaceable.
Yeah.
Like
in any job.
In any job, like everyone's easily replaceable in a company. So for you, your life doesn't matter to a company. But you have to make the stance and say, hey, I'm not going to do any work after Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, that is when I think you actually add value to yourself.
True, because that way you're not just thinking about work, because you will eventually have burnout. And then it'll affect your wife and kids. Because your kids won't get to see in the home. Your wife is always one. I'm talking about his wife because from a male perspective. But like even if a wife were to go, like the husband would always feel like I'm not getting to see my wife at all.
Right.
And it creates marriage issues. And so everything is like it's like a stepping stone to the other one. And so you have to fix it initially so that it doesn't have repercussions.
So if I had to ask you between 1080i versus 1080p.
Oh, okay.
Which one would you go for?
I wouldn't. So this is a tricky question because even today the average sports broadcast and the average television broadcast is done in I. Companies haven't made the full switch over to P because a lot of broadcast cameras don't support P. So like news is done in I. Sports is done in I.
Even in the US?
Even in the US. Even in the US, sports is, I believe in the US, some sports are done in P. But for the most part, anything to do with broadcast is done in I. And the reason is because of the equipment.
Yeah.
And the average equipment cannot do I. And also, I is easy to transmit because it needs lesser bandwidth.
Right.
You need more bandwidth to do P. P is good. Now, Elevation Church does their live stream at 1080i 5994. Yeah. Their entire stream, everything is done in 5994. In I 5994, and it works well for them in that environment. But
does every church have to do it?
Not really. So I personally am a big fan of 1080p 2997.
Okay.
I like the frame rate 2997 because I get the perfect motion blur for worship.
Right.
I feel like 5994 and 60 is a little bit too smooth for me in a church environment.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to be that smooth because I'm not shooting like now if I'm doing an interview, I'll do it maybe in 60 frames or I'll do it something, or something like that. Or if I'm shooting like a recap video, I'll do it in 60 frames or 1594. But I feel like live video because the native stream that YouTube supports and Facebook supports is 30 frames.
Right.
Anything above that, YouTube and Facebook automatically readjust for 30 frames per second.
Yeah.
So now your experience is now different because you're not streaming. Like if you're streaming 1594, YouTube will automatically and Facebook will automatically compress it down to 30.
Yeah.
You know, especially Facebook will compress it down to 30. Like the native the stream for Facebook is always in 30 frames. So I feel like it makes more sense to stream on 29:7 because it's good for me when especially in a worship environment. Now, Elevation does the variable frame rate. So I believe they do 30 frames per second for worship, and then they can hit a little switch, and then all the cameras change to 59:94. They like to do that because for worship, they get that beautiful motion blur between the cameras and it helps them with that movement. But for speaking moments, they want to have it at 59:94.
Yeah, even Lakewood, I think, they put on their cinema bars.
Yeah, for worship. Yeah,
and when
yeah.
it comes to sermon time, everything
changes. It's a full, yeah.
But yeah, it's good. So if you can, if there are anyone who's watching this and want to know more, you can always DM Nathan. His Instagram handle and Facebook handle will be down there in the description. And we would really encourage you to do media for churches, upload Christian content on the internet. And the second you are online, you are a global church. Keep this in mind. And we will keep doing much more of these. We will catch up again.
Sure, definitely. Yeah, we should have more guests. You know, I feel like it would be nice to get people who have worked here before, or even people in the field who are doing crazy stuff, or we can just even do sometimes like a Zoom setup. We will talk more about tech in the upcoming videos, but as of now, this is it. It was really nice talking to you. Good podcast. It was I enjoyed really nice talking.
And it's a lot of knowledge that I have gained from you, and I think the viewers also will have a lot of knowledge, a great depth of insight for them. And please be ready because a lot of people will start DMing.
I'm ready.
Please help the viewers
to get a second phone.
And Nathan is good at live stream. He's good at overall media. He can get
usually anything to do with video and media. Hit me up. Don't hit me up for audio because that's that's not my field. But we will send you to someone who knows audio. But anything to do with media and broadcast, hit me up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nate.
Of course, looking forward to it. All right, see ya.